After Elliott Abrams pled guilty to and was pardoned for lying to Congress about covert U.S. support for the brutal Contra rebels in Nicaragua in the 80s, he remained a constant figure in Washington's foreign policy establishment. But when he was appointed President Trump's special envoy to Venezuela this year, even those accustomed to the impunity that U.S. government officials linked to war crimes enjoy were shocked as they took another look at Abrams' resume. He was on the board of the U.S. Holocaust Museum's Committee on Conscience.
And their Committee on Conscience is supposed to stop and prevent future genocides from happening, right? So this was completely shocking to us, knowing specifically about Elliott Abrams' history in Guatemala, in El Salvador, and Nicaragua.
A coalition of survivors and survivors' descendants, both of the Nazi Holocaust and the repression and torture of US-backed Latin American regimes, have written to the museum. We cannot fathom how Abrams, a proven supporter of some of the world's most nefarious perpetrators of genocide and mass murderers for nearly 40 years, could be a member of your committee, they wrote.
If people knew more and understood what he'd done and what happened, I think a lot of that has really not been talked about.
The protesters cite two examples in particular, what they call Abrams' unconditional support as an official in the Reagan administration of the US-backed Guatemalan General Efrain Rios Mont's slaughter and torture of indigenous communities, which has been formally declared a genocide by the UN and Guatemalan courts, and the El Mozote massacre of over 900 civilians by the US-backed military and death squads of El Salvador in 1981. Abrams has repeatedly been challenged about these incidents in the past. His position is always the same. The U.S. had to be victorious.
It is ludicrous to respond to that kind of stupidity. This guy thinks we were on the wrong side in the Cold War. Maybe he personally was on the wrong side. I am one of the many millions of Americans who
Mr.
think
Abrams, you were on
happy
the wrong side
in
in supporting the massacre of peasants.
Maria Luisa Ruzal Vargas' father was one of the tens of thousands who disappeared after being seized by the US-backed Guatemalan military in the early 80s.
Because he says that it was about winning the Cold War and bad things had to happen.
Yeah, it's unconscionable. It's devastating, and it didn't have to happen. But what message are you sending for this museum, for what it represents in terms of building historical memory and really trying to foment a legacy of never again?
The Holocaust Museum declined our request for an interview. Those protesting have so far gathered over 60,000 signatures for a petition to remove Abrams from its Committee on Conscience. Shihab Rattansi, Al Jazeera, Washington.